Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
And greetings and salutations, everyone. You've tuned into Dr. Judy WTF, which is What the Freud, here at UBN Radio Network. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and of course in studio is Dr. Judy Rosenberg and a special guest who hasn't been here since May. We have Gina Ross in the house. And back then we were talking about trauma, and we're going to talk about a little bit of different trauma today. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter and how that may correlate. And this is a call-in show. If you want to get on the couch with these two therapists, and they're very beautiful, you can call us at area code 323-843-2826. And, of course, catch us on Stitcher, iTunes, and, of course, we're part of the iHeartRadio family. So where shall we begin, ladies?
Well, let's just begin by saying that Gina and I are on the same page in terms of helping to heal global disconnect. And I know she does a lot. You do a lot of work in the Middle East, bringing Israeli-Arab conflict together, which is why I'm so enthusiastic about talking to you and maybe even getting some ideas together as to how two women can make a difference on the planet. And
we have a new website as well, Healing Global Disconnect, which is in its infancy, but you can join. And please give us your email address so we can have you join the human race and the conversation.
And the humane race.
And yes, and very much the humane race.
Because we're human, but not all of us are humane. And the humane race.
No,
yes.
and join the party.
So I don't know. Should I sit closer to her? Am I not?
No, you're fine.
Camera?
You're
fine?
You're okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Just make sure your microphone's a little closer, and we'll be good.
Okay, very good. So
Me too.
So one of my motivating reasons for putting together a website called Healing Global Disconnect is because we're splintered. We're fractioned off into isms, which are the isms of mankind: black, white.
Republican,
Catholic,
Democrat, disabled, gay.
Every single religion,
Muslim,
race,
Catholic.
everything.
It goes on and on.
And although I am a Jew, I love being a Jew. I'm a Judaism. I'm literally a Judaism, and I'm proud to be a Jew. Although I have to say that if my Judaism is hurting other people, the buck stops there. That's when I'm not proud to be the human being that I want to be proud of. And so we have to find a way to come together as a united humanity. So instinctively, I just have to say, whenever I hear this life matters, that life matters, I'm hearing that ism again. And I get where it's coming from. I just wish, my personal wish is that we somehow find a way to not keep fracturing off and not isming. So I want to hear your opinion
Isming.
Stop isming already, and just find a way to join the human race. And yes, we're all aware that we're culturally injured, and that the name of our show tonight is Black Lives Matter and Cultural Injuries. And I think that we have massive cultural injuries. And Gina, you more than anybody are very familiar with cultural injuries,
Trauma
affects anger. And how collective trauma, and so there is collective trauma obviously amongst black people. There's collective trauma amongst every ism that exists on the planet, and so maybe you could speak a little bit about what does that mean to you, Black Lives Matter? What do you think it means in a global picture way of why people need to have that stand for their particular group like that?
Yeah, no, first of all, it's great to be here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
But I
Thank
want
you.
to start with something that's on the positive note, and then I'll go back to
Sure.
what you asked.
Sure.
In that, in my sense, what we all have in common, all of us, no matter what color, what ism, what religion, what ethnicity, what part of the globe we live in,
Yes.
we all have the same nervous system.
Yeah.
We all register pain in the same way and joy
Right.
in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have the same basic universal needs.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I'm hoping to bring to anything that I'm doing in terms of work, of healing, is to always remember that that communality is there.
Yes.
That piece is always there no
Yeah.
matter what ism we have to go into.
Okay.
Now, it is necessary to go into the isms. It's impossible to eliminate and think that we can have a bland or common culture or language or color or gender orientation.
And by the way, I just want to clarify, I don't, when I say join the human race, I'm not necessarily
Right.
talking about blending the human race. I'm talking about that as we are unique in and of ourselves culturally, we bring a lot
Absolutely.
of beauty and
Absolutely.
uniqueness, and you know, who wants
Absolutely.
to be in a world where everybody's just what do they call Muzak, you know, all
Yeah,
blended
yeah.
down. But there's got to be the boundaries where we're respecting each other.
Yeah, so okay, so to build on what you're saying, the necessity to really have each ethnicity, each culture being recognized as such
Yes.
and honored as such. Right now, what's happening, and I want to expand a little bit on it for a moment,
Sure.
so that we really understand what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, in that moment, the Black community is hurting very badly.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the only ones hurting, by the way.
Right.
The police is hurting very badly.
Absolutely.
The police community is hurting very badly.
Mm-hmm.
But the Black community is hurting very badly for a long time.
Yeah.
Historically, it's now centuries, and I think there were a lot of advances that were happening, and there are still a lot of advances that are happening in terms of more equality and more belonging to the country, more being part of it. But there were also some gains that were erased, maybe by globalization, maybe by thinking that affirmative action is enough already, maybe by gutting the cities from their industries, and then the community ends up suffering there because there are no jobs, and there's then poverty and lack of education, etc. So I have been talking to quite a few people, and I actually just did a small trainings directed directly to the Black Lives Matters to see in what way we can help.
Okay.
In the understanding that the hurting is very, very strong right now.
Yeah.
So when I see that kind of hurting, and I'll talk about the negative side of it in a moment, but when I see that kind of hurting at first, and the depth, I was really struck how deeply ingrained that suffering is.
Very much so.
When I talked to the people, that I felt like, well, the first thing that we have to do and say, we get it. You're right. You're right. What was done was very bad, was awful. It's very difficult to survive it. The trauma is there. It's at the collective level. Somebody actually used a sentence that I thought was interesting, the way she said it, that racism is in the DNA of the country. I don't think that that's totally true anymore. I think that a lot of people have moved beyond the racism, but we've not moved beyond the impact of racism.
I see. So
The
we haven't healed from it, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
We haven't healed neither as the Black community suffering from it, nor as the white community taking responsibility to do something about it. And let me give you an example. A few years ago, the King of Spain decided to apologize to the Jews for the Inquisition, 400 years later.
Yeah. Didn't the Pope do that as well?
Yeah, the Pope did something
Yeah,
else
okay.
about
Okay.
Catholicism, for sure.
Yeah.
But this one thing, like, wow, I know, I remember that day that I felt very relieved. So, oh my goodness, why should that matter? But it mattered. It mattered that
A lot.
400 years later.
No, a lot.
Right.
And this is where I
Right.
totally get what you're saying, because
Yeah.
I think one of the healthiest things that we could do as human beings is self-reflect and self-correct and own our own stuff
Right,
individually,
right,
culturally. Okay, so I get it,
Yeah.
that there's been an injury. And
So
yeah,
there's the
okay.
injury there.
Right.
There's also the fact that I think America, white America, needs to make a formal apology for the past,
Okay,
in my view.
okay.
And that's very difficult because the fear is like, how far is that going to go? This is not us anymore. It was our forefathers. This is over for 200 years or whatever. And not 200 years, but something like that.
Okay.
And basically, because of those fears, I don't think the same apology has happened, like what Germany did about the Holocaust with the Jews, for example, with taking on the reparation. America did do a few things, and the civil rights movements and affirmative actions were ways of repairing the past. Things have taken place, but it didn't get continued completely.
Okay.
The job is not finished.
Okay.
You have part, it's not all of the African American community by any means, but part of the African American community is really in dire circumstances, in a dire situation. And I remember I followed very carefully everything that happened since Ferguson. And I remember thinking about reading one article that was beautiful by an African American writer, and he said, we just need love.
Yeah.
We need love.
Yeah.
There's
And
that
I feel
unconditional love.
But you see,
Wow.
it's like, I have a 3.5-year-old grandson, and when he needs love, he gets really angry. We were talking a little bit
Yeah.
about that. And so when you're really hurting, it's hard to say, I'm really hurting. I need a lot of love. I need compassion. And so I think that people need to be taught, even when they're taking a stand for their culture or their race or whatever it is, to speak in peaceful healing dialogue kind
That
of
is
terms.
totally true. I
Where
totally
they could
agree
say,
with you.
listen, when you
Yeah.
it makes me feel really not a part of you, or
Yeah.
it makes me feel
Yeah.
distant from you, or it makes me feel hurt and insulted. And I think that when people take these really hardcore stands, and please give me more information on this, I think that people naturally get scared. It's
Yes,
all in the
yes,
verbiage.
yes,
When you say
yes.
Black Lives Matter, it's like you're saying Black Lives Matter, okay?
Yeah.
But there's also the hurt part, which is I'm hurt, you hurt me,
Yeah.
I matter, okay? Which is really different than
Which is really what
Is that matter or madder?
Matter, right, right.
MADDER?
And I'm not picking on the
So-
Black lives. I'm saying
No.
anybody, when
Right,
they say
right.
this matters, that matters. Okay, so
So what I want to say is this: is like if we look at what is the impact of trauma, what is the impact of individual trauma, what is the impact of collective trauma, and one of them, the suffering is going to express itself through anger,
right.
anger and rage, and
Absolutely.
rage is actually anger coupled with helplessness. And when there is that kind of a stand that we are so enraged, it's really the measure of helplessness. So there are two things,
Right.
there are two or three things that need to happen at the same time, in my view. One is for us to recognize that if a community or another person or another entity is in the trauma showing those signs, for us to say, oh, wow, that's a sign of trauma. Let me be on the alert. Let me see what I can do other than being reactive.
Right.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I wanted to offer the trainings to the community, because if we discharge the anger, we talked about that last time, if we are able to discharge the anger from our nervous system, then it goes from toxic anger into healthy anger.
Okay.
And then we can understand what is the impact of our words, what is the impact of our actions, what are we doing that affects the other in a negative way so that they cannot really give us what we're asking. So that would be the part of the African American community to handle on that part. But that doesn't take away the side of us watching the suffering and saying, wait a second, let us send the signals that we are seeing it.
But that's
So-
being humane, right? And that's also
Right.
taking a stand of
Right.
number one, compassion
Exactly.
and maturity.
Exactly.
It's a mature thing, because
Yes.
if somebody's hurting and they're acting out because they're hurting, then when I was listening again to the model of transactional analysis, there's parent, adult, child. It's an old model that they used to use to define interactive pieces of relationship. And so when somebody's being a hurt child, it's a really good idea to become that parent or to become the adult.
Right,
Because
right.
if you're child to child, right, you're going to be two babies in a playpen
Yeah,
making
yeah.
a big mess. So it
But-
takes that, it almost takes the adult to pull out of the system and look and see,
Yes, yes. And
my
there
fellow
are, by the
human
way.
being is suffering,
Exactly.
and they're not acting
Exactly.
in a peaceful or dialed down way, or what do you want to call it, just a
Calmer way.
way. And so this is what they look like when they're upset.
This is what it looks like. Exactly.
Yes.
This is what happens.
Right.
So I think that kind of understanding, if we extend it,
Yeah,
and that's the compassion and that's the love,
Right.
I think that will go a very long way.
agreed.
Now, at the same time, I will say to the movement, don't wait for this to happen. There are things that you also can do to change the situation and to make this happen too,
Okay.
to facilitate it. So, and I had a sentence where I said, what if we marched and said, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, and all lives matter, where then they're sending the signal, we want you to pay attention, but we're also aware that we're all belonging to this matter.
Yeah, but wouldn't that water down the movement? Because all of a
Well-
sudden it's gone from one entity to all entities.
Good point.
Well, it's not about from to, is this and Black Lives Matters and all lives matters. I don't think there's readiness in the system for it yet. I'm just saying that's where I want to end up there. If we discharge enough, and if we also get the white community to come through and have the compassion and have the love and the understanding that this is actually the result of trauma.
Yeah.
This behavior is the result of trauma. However, some of it can be, violent and scary and not likable.
When
Well,
go ahead. I'm
I was going to
sorry,
say,
Walt.
I was just going to interject. How is the fact that over almost 3/4 of all blacks are from unwed mothers, which is 3 times higher than it was in 1965 when all the civil rights stuff started? 75% of all children are born with unwed mothers, which means there's no father.
Right. Well, it doesn't mean there's no father, but there's no father in the house.
In the house, or
And that's-
in many instances
And
involved in the
that's
child's
part
life.
of how the system has not helped them.
Correct.
I remember working for Head Start and looking at how the welfare system was operating at the time many years ago, and I was appalled by the unwitting. I mean, it was a very nice movement. It was a very caring organization that was really trying to help, but there were some built-in things that just harm the family, because if you're poor but the man in the house, you don't get money.
Oh, really?
Only if you're a single mother with your kids, you get money.
Okay.
So we participated in this
In that
happening.
You
system.
facilitated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, like with the schools, for example, had we not just thought about schools as whether the local people are paying taxes enough to make good schools, to produce good schools, and we invested in schools everywhere. And it didn't have to be only affirmative action. It could be mixed schools, but it could be also black schools, but good schools, where there was a real good investment. Then that would have been also very helpful. And I think I think the most important thing right now is the validation. I
Okay,
think
it's like a mirroring. It's like,
I think yes.
okay, and let's go back to that, because I'm big on narcissistic injuries, which
Yeah.
means injury to the self, and I see it on a cultural basis. And so when we're wounded, when we're injured to the self, meaning that we don't get our narcissistic supplies. And on a human level, we talk about this quite a bit. The breastfeeding, the eye contact, the stay-at-home parent, the attachment, the regulation. And so what happens is that when we're not fed, so to speak, it goes macro, and so then we're not well, and then we project our pain onto others, and then it just gets bigger and it reverberates into society. So, this is not just a simple, isolated problem.
Exactly.
It's so deep rooted in all these cultural injuries, going back to slavery, the humiliation, the degradation of that. And then,
the brutality of it.
The brutality, the splitting of the family, and
cruelty,
so on.
Yeah.
And so there's so many layers. And so here we are in 2016, and we're still seeing the reverberation of all of this.
Yes, we're seeing the reverberation.
We are.
Yes. And I think there has been a huge movement, though, a huge progress, but not enough. And I think that this is the occasion I believe this is the opportunity for another bigger jump into the healing.
Okay, so I'm with you when you say white people have to apologize. I understand the concept,
formal
but
America has to apologize.
Okay, but see, we're such a melting pot. Which white people? The
I said
the racist white people, the non-racist white people.
That's not what I'm talking about.
The ones from Scandinavia, the ones that are not from Scandinavia.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about formal America, governmental America.
Okay.
Whether it's Congress, whether it's the White House, or the combination of the two.
Consciousness.
It's not only the consciousness, a real declaration, a real assuming the responsibility for what happened in the past, not in the present.
Okay.
Let's just do it in the past and validate that we understand why you are where you are right now.
Okay.
What is your suffering?
But
That's the first thing you cannot get through if you don't give the validation.
But from what I'm reading from Black Lives Matter, if that was done, I can guarantee you the immediate response, well, that's just a tiny little minuscule start, but that's not enough. We want more.
Okay.
We want reparations, which we've been doing, I believe, since 1965 when the Civil Rights Movement started.
Yeah.
And we're talking, and you're correct, we're talking multi generations since this whole thing started back in the 1800s.
We're doing it, but we also gutted it in the last 20 years.
Last 20 years or the last 8?
I would say in the last 20 years. I think that when globalization hit the ground in a big way and industries left to the country, I think that has been very harmful for the inner cities.
Well, it's been harmful for everybody, right?
Yes,
employees that were in the inner cities, et cetera.
Yes, but specifically, it hit hard everybody, it's true. And that's why we have the polarization going on in the country right now at all levels. But it hit hard particularly the African-American community. Okay, because they were already at the disadvantage point because of the collective trauma. So we need to understand that. I remember a politician saying something like, I don't feel white America owes anything to any of its immigrants except we owe something to the blacks. Like, it was very clear. And this is not a person who would have normally said this kind of thing. It was like there was a recognition, but I think this recognition has to be more expounded. Now, I do also want to bring another understanding that I had recently, that there are many different levels of reactions in the African American community, and you have the whole thing. You have a lot of African American people who are disavowing the Black Lives Matters, not the Black Lives Matters itself, but the violent. The vociferous part,
the militant aspect,
the militant and vociferous aspect of it. So this is not like happening across the board at all. And so I feel like I look sometimes at a group at the different pieces, and I say each one of them is representing part of the whole.
Yeah.
Because if you want to talk about part of the whole, when we entered the last real war was declared in this country was World War II. Do you realize that every single Japanese was taken and thrown into concentration camps, and every single one of them and their immediate families lost everything. And by that I mean their homes,
Right.
their businesses, their possessions, everything. And you don't see the Japanese jumping up and down saying, hey, you guys took all our stuff and ruined our families for a couple of generations.
I don't.
So
think-
where do we stop? Where do we draw the
I
line?
don't think it compares. I really don't. I think that, I mean, I'm sorry that what happened to the Japanese, and I understand all of that stuff, but I don't think it compares for, first of all, they've been taken out of their countries. The Japanese came here voluntarily. They were taken out of Africa to become slaves, okay, to be made slaves. So there was no choice at all. Second of all, Africa didn't come to war with America so that we can say, okay, this is why we're keeping you and taking everything away from you. And this lasted for centuries. So I think it's a very deep, now here's the trick. It's very difficult. So when I now, for example, let's say I'm a white in America, born in America, and my parents didn't do anything to the African American. We're very nice to them. I was very nice to them. I don't have any connection with the racism, America being racist. I'm not connecting to it. And I think white America thinks that it's beyond racism, that it has gone over it. Mm-hmm. While that's true in a good part, what's also true that there is enough of like unresolved guilt that doesn't allow for a full recognition of the harm. It's like, okay, but look what they did and look how they are now and other people have reacted better. It's true. There are other ways to react, and that's what I want to tell the community. I say, look, there are different ways to react. Let's see if we can help you react in a different way. That will give you what you want. Mm-hmm. The whole idea is for you to get the belonging and the dignity and the respect and the equality that you want. Let's see how we can facilitate to bring that in the best way, in the quickest way, without engaging in all of the guilt. So I was looking, you were talking about Judaism and all of that, and I'm Jewish too, so I was looking at why right now there's such a backlash against the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And I want to teach the Holocaust in a way that people, when they assimilate their responsibility for it, they immediately pass to the other side, to the righteous people, mm-hmm. to conquer that fear of the guilt.
Immediate is a pretty aggressive word.
I'm sorry?
You said immediately. That's a pretty aggressive word.
Yeah, but that the action itself, the action of my acknowledging my responsibility to something would by definition already take me to a higher level of spirituality where I don't belong to that past anymore. I overcame it. And I think that may be a way, and I'm talking about the Holocaust, which was tremendous,
yes.
It's such a horror. And yet I look at why are people trying to deny it? Why are people, attacking the Jews? Like, what's happening there? And it's unresolved guilt.
Well, there's even a faction that claims it never happened.
Well, that's the denial, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So that's what I'm talking. I'm saying, okay, so how can I help those people? What are the feelings that has overcome them so that I can help them get over this and acknowledge it, take responsibility, and go beyond it.
It would be beautiful if there were a pathway to repair, which is why I work so hard on mind maps and pathways. And
there are pathways to repair.
Okay, so what if, let's say, what you were saying, Walt, is that you repair with people, whether they be black or whether they be Japanese or Holocaust survivors, and then they say, well, that's not enough. You really hurt us, and now you owe us this, and now you owe us this, and now you owe us this. Well,
that's one of the mantras is reparations. As we've
so
discussed.
where does it stop?
Where's the line drawn?
Yeah,
exactly.
Like what do we do? Because there's so much damage at this point.
That's true. That's true. At the same time, I would say, look, we have so many African Americans in prisons. Mm-hmm. That they're costing us $35,000 a year each person,
and
just to keep them.
You bet.
Okay.
They talk about they're in criminal cages.
Yeah, and they're not working, and they're not paying taxes, and they're costing us a huge amount of money.
Okay.
is there a way that we can transform the system in such a way that people are put to work, become taxpayers, belong to the community, and we're not spending $35,000 on them every year. We can spend it on the education.
Well, it would be great if there were reparative ways of repairing the psyche within prison, which would really inspire me to bring my system of healing and maybe yours into prison.
Absolutely.
Prison system. So, but it's not just the blacks, it's everyone in prison is costing the taxpayers 35, let's say, thousands of dollars. However, some people would be causing more than $35,000 worth of damage if they were out. So now how do we make the distinction? Because if somebody who's a murderer is out of prison and murders an innocent person, then that's more than $35,000 of damage to the society at large.
You know what we have found that they did, I think, EMDR with very, very hardcore criminals in Canada. And they have found that 99.9% of the hardcore criminals who had been traumatized as children. And when they helped them heal, they were all went from being sociopath to being really upset with what they've done and wanting to repair it.
Taking responsibility.
Taking responsibility and wanting to repair it, wanting to repair what they have done. So there are ways to approach the justice system. Here's my understanding, that everything that we're doing in life, whether it's education or the justice system or the military or the police for that matter, that the element of trauma and self-regulation should be invested in every single one of these structures.
And starting at a very preliminary school level and starting with attachment, I refer back to John Bowlby, if only we would stay at home and breastfeed and give our children the foundational.
Well, again, 72 to 75% are born with unwed mothers, and so the nurturer of the nurturer wasn't there.
Not there.
I don't know that that's completely true, because there's something very nurturing in the African American community. They have some unbelievable cultural qualities that are very, very special. I think that the damage has become because of the drugs. The drugs
the way I see it,
really hurt the nervous system of the babies.
Okay, but the drugs are a direct result of that hole in the soul. So when you don't get the
they're trying to self-soothe.
They're trying to self-soothe. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
I agree. But you see, for example, right now, we're developing technology, mental health technology, to heal babies and put their nervous system back on track.
Okay.
So if we, again, if I say it again, if we can introduce the concept of trauma healing at every level of intervention that we're doing, whether it's in school, in the hospital, with justice mothers, with prisoners, with people in the workforce, with media coverage of the race relations, if we introduce that understanding of what trauma, the impact of trauma and how it can be healed.
I really, you're giving me ideas. I really think more workshops should be run where this reparative work is actually happening in an enactment form, where people who traumatically react one way are actually taught to empathize. With what's going on. For example, a black man puts his hand in the pocket. The white cop says, put your hands up in the air. The black guy freezes over because he's scared out of his wits that he's going to be shot. He can't even hear what the cop is saying, and so that whole information is being garbled because he's in PTSD right then and there.
And
post-traumatic stress disorder.
So everything, goes into
on both sides.
On both sides. And this is like if you don't mind putting my mind map up, because I want to show the process, is that.
And those of you that are listening, you can go to drjudywtf.com and see it. And by the way, you are listening and watching to drjudywtf.com. I'm your host, Walt Lusk. We have Gina Ross, a marriage and family child counselor and trauma expert here in the house. And we are talking about Black Lives Matter. And stay tuned. We're going to be shrinking a song pretty quick here.
Yeah, and also Gina has a book out on the market called...
From the trauma vortex into the healing vortex.
Yeah, and I have a copy of
A
it.
guide
and-
for the public.
Thank you.
I have it actually for several sectors. I have one for the medical field and one for the military field, etc.
Okay.
The way to reach out to get the book is on www.traumainstitute.org.
TraumaInstitute.org.
Thank
Okay.
you. And she's off to Israel in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. To do some more.
Yes.
So your
the-
mind map.
So the gist of it is that if you look at the top third of the mind map and we look at it on an individual and global level, it represents the injuries to the psyche of the baby, and then on a global level, it represents the injury to the human race, the black part of it, the Jewish part of it, the Japanese part of it, the Iranian part of it, the Armenian part of it, the Indian. I mean, we're all injured on whatever level. And then what happens as a result of these injuries is we have a reaction to the wound, which is where your work comes in, because you're calming down the amygdala.
Right.
And so if we don't calm down the amygdala and we don't calm down our individual and global reactions, we're going to encode horrible messages like I don't matter. If you look at what Black Lives Matter is really saying, is they're really feeling at the core that they
That's right.
don't
That's right.
matter.
That's
And so
right.
we have
That's
to
right.
address this core injury.
Core
and
belief.
core
Wound.
core collective belief. And so we have these collective beliefs and we have individual beliefs. And so what happens is when something within our culture trips that core belief off, it goes into the middle row of the mind map, which is chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And there's a lot of chaos. You can call those riots. And then the defenses would be picking up the guns and the bombs and and forming coalitions and so forth.
And
healthy.
harming their own communities. That's
Yes.
what so sad.
Yes,
Yes.
they do.
Is it trauma? But they do. We all, when we are in the trauma, this is what's so amazing. When we are in the trauma vortex, we are not aware how much we're harming ourselves.
Yeah.
We're willing to harm ourselves if we can get our revenge. It's very
So
simple.
we're willing to blow ourselves up if we can revenge others,
Yeah.
which is what's happening today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds very passive aggressive.
Sounds okay. So once our defenses start breaking down, we will either. I'm now on panel number 6, the last piece of the middle row. We either implode or we explode. So the imploders are the ones that suicide, and the exploders are the ones that
To
homicide. Okay, and attack. And so that's the end game. So there's no. It's a no-win situation. So the reason that Gina is here today is to explore solutions to this. So what's the solution? So panel 7, which is the way that I think in my system, is that we have to somehow calm down that amygdala, bring back the light, join the human race, join the humane race, as I say on my website, and please do go to it, healingglobalDisconnect.com. And we've got to come together and protect each other so that we're not feeling that we're enemies, that we're feeling that we're in a compassionate conversation with each other. In order to heal, we have to put aside our isms, even for 1 minute, and listen and step into the shoes of another human being. And that's very important. That's what you were saying, the mirroring.
Well, there's the
is
empathy part.
The empathy
Right.
part. You have to, you can't just go right, wrong, good, bad. You have to,
And we
that's the
cannot-
key, is step into the empathic shoes of that other human being.
And we cannot do it when we are in the trauma vortex ourselves.
I agree.
If we're not self-regulated, if we're possessed by toxic fear or toxic anger,
Yeah.
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or even resentment or unmanaged, unprocessed guilt.
Or self-righteousness, which is really big.
Yes.
I'm right, you're wrong. We can't think that way. We have to think, what are we going to do to understand each other? And then through that compassion, we're calm enough to come up with some real solutions. And to me, a real solution is a win-win. It's always win-win. It's panel 7, which is the way that we come together and create more than who we are.
An African-American friend of mine, when I was talking about Black Lives Matters and All Life Matters, he said, look, they are thinking, our house is burning, we want the firemen to come to our house.
Right.
The rest of the street is not burning. And I said, that's true, you're right. But if you throw a bomb on the house next door, now you've got two houses burning, and then the police is going to have to go to both places, and they're not going to go to your house necessarily first or the most.
Okay.
So it was very important to understand. I think the most crucial part of this is that each part of society has a part to play.
Yep.
In this one, the white community, the police community, the African American community, the government, the political leaders are very, it's so easy to incite unwittingly because they're coming from the trauma vortex themselves. It's dreadful. The impact of it is very big. So each part has its part to play.
So you're saying that whatever it is, if we come from the consciousness of calm, self-regulated, when we come from that consciousness, then we have a much, much better chance to really solve problems and not activate.
Yes. And I want to say one more thing is that I still think that Black Lives Matters has to come first in the sentence. It has to exist. It cannot be replaced by All Lives Matters only.
Well, you're speaking to the injury that they have.
That's
they're
right.
saying, I'm hurting.
Exactly. So the validation. So we jumped immediately to say, but all life matters. Why do you say only that? No, you're right. Black lives matters. But if you then go kill the cop, that means not all lives matters. You lost your audience. You lost your validation. That's why it has to be followed, and all lives matters. The two pieces are very essential, because if you just go Black Lives Matters only, and then kill the cop or get rid of the cop or whatever, something that's negative that can be seen as incitement, what's going to happen is the talk is still coming from the trauma vortex. Is going to create a backlash on the other side.
Right, and I think
this is very important.
What I'm hearing is that if somebody's going to say I matter, whether it's white, Jewish, black, I matter, my life matters, correct? Then it can't be disconnected, if you will, from it can't be connected to blame. I don't think it's gonna work if it's connected to blame.
Well,
once you start blaming,
unhappily, it doesn't give us what we need.
No,
it doesn't give us what we need.
Black lives matter, Jewish lives matter, this lives matter, and it's all your fault. Okay, the blame is not going to work.
Yeah, but if it's
not reparative.
But if it's all your fault and it's true, again, I'm very divided about this, because I was stuck when I was working with them. How deeply ingrained the suffering is. I was really stuck by it. And that meant to me that the validation had to be of 100%. They needed to be no but, only and, not but. And I thought that had to be the first movement. Then the but can come after, later.
So we've only got about 2 minutes. I was going to say, let's just address this. Okay, so let's say Congress admits that, hey, we messed up, and we are acknowledging America messed up for whatever reason and when, and we are officially acknowledging that Black lives do matter in whatever context that they expect us to do. So now what? I mean, how is that really going to calm things down?
I think that would be a huge amount of validation, where it would open up the possibility for dialogue. Discussion, okay. Yeah, for dialogue of what is possible, what's not possible, what's hard, what's realistic, what's not realistic. Validation is a sine qua non condition. It has to be the first condition. Validation.
It's the mirroring. It's the mirroring.
Yeah.
It's the mirroring to the wound.
Yeah, it is essential, because without that, the rage cannot abate.
Got it. It's the same as it's the same as in therapy. Somebody comes in and says, I'm hurting, and you've got to say, yeah, I get it, you're hurting. What did I do to hurt you? And then they could say, I did blah, blah, blah to hurt you. Yeah, I get it. I did this. What can I do to make it better? It's a conversation.
So just as a last thought,
Yeah.
what I wanted to add, then the importance for all of us, the ones in the trauma vortex or the ones just witnessing the trauma vortex, is to differentiate between validating the suffering and differentiating with the destructive way of expressing it.
Okay.
I do not have to validate the destructive way of showing the suffering.
Right.
But I have to be able to validate the suffering no matter what happened.
Okay, that's a very
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
distinction. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You have
you.
been listening to Gina Ross and Dr. Judy Rosenberg chat about Black Lives Do Matter. And here on Dr. Judy WTF, which is What the Freud. And our last segment here, because we're running out of time, is a song we're going to shrink. And we've selected a song called Brother Louie by the group Hot Chocolate. Now, it's a little older song, but I think it'll be rather apparent. And both you ladies have a copy of the words if you want to chime in terms of how we're going to shrink this tune. She was black as the night. Louie was whiter than white. Danger, danger when you taste brown sugar. Louie fell in love overnight. Hey man, what's wrong with that? Nothing bad, it was good. Louie had the best girl he could. When she took him home to meet her mama and papa, Louie knew just where he stood.
Well, this clearly is the black and white divide here, and the white guy falls in love with a black girl. So underneath it all, we're all just human beings, and we're attracted. But it doesn't go too well, I guess, when Louis introduces her to Mama. Right? He knew where he stood. So this is so deep. I mean, this just goes back forever. This is an old song.
That's
and
an old
that's
song.
what they're talking about, that the racism is not over.
No,
It's not
it's
over.
not.
Okay.
Louie, Louie, Louie. Louie, you're going to cry. All right, what's this about? I love her, man. Oh, yeah, man. Let me tell you, I don't want no honky in my family. You dig? No honky in my family.
Right. So there it is. It's deep.
What's
And it's
honky? What
like
does it mean?
Honky's a white person. It's a slang.
Right. So either way, they don't want the other. They don't want to unite here. And so again and again, the song is emphasizing how the split happens, and yet these two people are just two people, and they just love each other.
They want to love each other, and they're getting resistance. See what I mean? Louis really caused a scene. He did. I tell you, ain't no difference between black or white. Brothers, you know what I mean. Louis, 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 you're gonna cry.
Well, it would be really cool from my perspective if we stopped talking black, white, red, green, orange, purple one of these days. But I guess that's not going to happen for a long time. And there it is again in song, music, and everything all over the place.
There he stood in the night, knowing what's wrong from what's right. He took her home to her mama, to his mama and papa. Louis had a terrible fight. What's going on? Well, we're in love. Now listen, let me tell you, I don't want no spook in my family, which is a black person. Slang. Get it? No spook in my family. So now we have resistance on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds almost like a little Romeo and Juliet, right? But with the race involved here, the Capulets and the whatever. I think one was a rich family, poor family. We're always dividing, whether it be social class or color or whatever. So both families don't want this.
No, they don't. And obviously that drives a gigantic wedge between them. See what I mean? Louis really caused a scene. He did, I tell you. Ain't no difference between black or white. Brothers, you know what I mean. Louis, Louis, Louis.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously this song speaks to black lives, white lives. We're still struggling with blending these lives. And I say join the humane race, join the human race.
And you can join that by healingglobalDisconnect.com and put in your email address and join the conversation to join the human race and Healing Global Disconnect, because Dr. Judy and I both, and I'm sure Gina Ross would agree, there's a lot of it going around on a global basis.
And there was one great-faced YouTube episode that I saw where a lady was talking. I think it was a 2-minute thing. She was just saying, amazing that we're picking our battles over the
Color of our skin.
amount of melanin in our skin.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
just was really just very factual about it. It's very effective. Maybe you can look it up. I'll look it up and I'll try to post it.
Well, ain't
On
no
our
difference
site.
between black or white. That's our show, folks. You've been listening to Dr. Judy Rosenberg and Gina Ross chatting about Black Lives Matter here on Dr. Judy WTF, What the Freud. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and we're here every Thursday here at UBN Radio Network, and you can check us out on YouTube. And thanks so much for all your likes and comments. We're getting a lot of those on our Covert Narcissism show just last week, and 2 weeks ago, excuse me. And we had, 2 weeks ago, and then we had Vincent Jenna on, who was amazing as well. So we're going to sign off with our song. And if you want to write us with comments or questions, you can write us at info@drjudywtf. So until next time, God bless everyone.